Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with Netherlands-based British comedian, improviser, musician, and writer Stephen Morgan. He moved to the Netherlands from Brisbane, Australia, and has toured and performed in famous comedy clubs and festivals around the world alongside acts such as Stephen Carlin, Damien, and Greg Shapiro. Since moving to the Netherlands, he has become a cast member, performer, and teacher with Amsterdam's easylaughs. He is a regular on the English language scene around mainland Europe and hosts the popular comedy night LYFAO. We get into quite a bit in this interview. Enjoy. It's great to get to know you. Thank you for taking a minute out. And I want to begin everything here with, especially in your line of work, how did you survive that 2-year period of lockdown with COVID? And how has that time period subsequently changed you now that we're coming out and the world's waking up and there's more things that we were used to prior to the pandemic happening?
Yeah, no, that's a big question because I feel like in many ways a lot of us are still making sense of all that, even though it's been quite some months since things opened up here. It's funny. It's one of those things. I mean, like during the time, I also have like a background in IT, so I do have some areas where I was still able to continue making money, getting work, and everything like that. So that wasn't so much of a problem. However, I think that it just the whole pandemic era affected so many people in so many different ways. I mean, of course, many people lost their lives, and it's kind of turned the world kind of upside down. And if you were to think about the things that happened, it's hard to believe the measures that were taken and compare anything else, at least in my lifetime. And I do think that, as someone who's gets energy from creative activities, and particularly with collaborating with others, there was a period of time where it was great to have like a little bit of calm and peace when lockdowns first started happening. But over time, that did turn into quite a negative thing, which was hard to deal with, because you're very much on your own. You're living a very sedentary life. You're kind of interacting with people only by video, which in itself is limited in how much you can really get out of it compared to just having a chat with someone. But and over time now, I mean, I feel like now things are, I say normal, but like now things have opened up again. It's almost like it's easy to forget that period ever happened, It's easy to kind of like almost dismiss it, but there's always just reminders of things, of like how precarious all this is, how the things that you're kind of like throwing your heart and effort into, it's like, like knowing that things could change tomorrow in a way that you'd never really encountered in your life before. I mean, I guess it's a pretty heavy sort of answer to an opening question, but it really is something which I think even now, even like on every so often something will happen and will cross my mind and make me go, oh yeah, damn, this is not how I used to see these things.
It is heavy, and I think that's why I wanted to start off, because I think sometimes there is that notion where it's like, all right, we're getting back to it, let's move on, and it's not so much asking the questions so we can stay in that period. It's being reflective enough to say, this is where I'm at and this is where we're going. But you're right. I mean, I remember when this all began, we were all like, oh, it'll be 2 weeks, then it'll maybe be a month, and then, and then it would like go back to especially when the warm months came around, we'd go back to living, and then a variant would come out. So it was like start, stop, start, stop. Yeah. It was this weird like foxtrot that we were all stuck in. But, I'm curious with you, to get to the bottom of who you are and what you do, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day, and one of the kids looks up at you and says, what do you do for a living? How would you answer them?
You know what? I love that question because it's just such a visceral. You really do put yourself in the position. I like it. I think, you know what? To be frankly honest, I would just tell them I work in IT, because for me, and this applies to so many situations, I kind of hate the expectations that come from some of the things that people ask around like a career, and a career as a form of existence. like, I think that everyone gets it to an extent. Like a doctor is asked about like medical ailments someone has, or, you know, someone who's a mechanic someone else will say like, actually, I've been having a problem with my car. And there's always this kind of expectation that, and like a real sort of reduction of someone to that one thing that they do. And what the joy of telling people that I work in IT is that there's almost no one in the world who then follows that up with, oh, really? That's so fascinating. Tell me more. It allows us to just kind of see that the idea of the career, the idea of like this one thing defining someone is not always the best way to get to know someone or to see what they're about. But of course, by that point, the 3-year-old will have gotten bored and moved on to something else. But I guess that's why they won't ask me back to answer that question again.
You know, it's interesting because my main vocation is IT. I'm a technician for a school district. So I've never thought about it that way, but it's true, because then when I say, yeah, I have a jazz radio show or I interview people from around the world, then it opens up the box. But yeah, when you say IT, it's like, oh, okay, cool. You know, I mean, I don't even get, are you Windows, or are you Mac, or what? It ends there, you know. And then, of course, if they really want to get into it, it's like, do you really want me to bore you with this? Do you really want to get into it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. And honestly, like, I mean, I know that that's the example with IT, but even with comedy things, it's like, for example, if I mention about stand-up comedy, then there's often like because I don't know if it's just because of like my profile as well, because like I'm a like middle-aged white male, and there's some people who are kind of like, oh yeah, do you like you must like this particular comedian, and they'll give me a name and I'll be like, ooh, okay, no, don't like that comedian one bit. But obviously this is someone who's trying to connect with you. And it's very hard then to kind of like, basically say to someone, it's like, actually, I find that guy punches down. It's really quite horrendous, the stuff they do. And I can appreciate the skill, but like, honestly, this doesn't feel good that this is the first thing you want to say to me. But of course, that's not a great way to respond to it either. So it's almost like as if there's a real personalness to it that I just don't want to, let's try and find other things we can connect with and actually see each other as human beings and, get to know each other first. It's just amazing how just mentioning the fact you do comedy just makes things too personal too quickly.
Yeah. Oh, I imagine so. So are you in the Netherlands now?
I am, yeah. I've been living here almost 5 years now, which blows my mind.
Wow. So what's that like? So you're originally from London, you're in the Netherlands now. What's that been like for you to kind of get into a different culture and a different place?
It's fascinating. It's something which I think before I first lived outside of the country I'm from in the UK, there was a part of me that was always like, I want to live in another country. Can't quite put my finger on why, but I feel like it's the sort of thing that would be an experience that I'd learn a lot from. So it was a really vague thing, and I lived in Australia for a while, and then later the Netherlands. And I guess it has been that on so many different levels, on so many different things. And I think that the biggest thing to me is constantly noticing things which you have in common with, like, your home culture and the place that you're living, and the things that are completely different to the extent where people just don't care about them in the way that you do. And it starts to make you really question. It's kind of like, why do I care so much about, this particular thing that is absolutely meaningless to these other people? Because I'm big into my music too. And I just remember moving to Australia, and they've got this annual list, the Hottest 100, which is like, it's voted for by many, many people. And essentially, the results of this Hottest 100 end up kind of like dictating who the most popular Australian artists are going to be for the next year, and what radio stations are going to play and things like that. It's incredibly influential. Yet, before I lived in Australia, even though I was writing for magazines, I was like, the hottest, what? It's like, is that another one of those like boring lists that just means nothing, and just like the most inoffensive rises to the top? And of course, Australians weren't so happy with that sort of description on what was like something they've been thinking and caring about since they were very small and young, and and it's, yeah, and it's just so fascinating. You almost feel like you're watching a nature documentary when you're watching these things that matter to someone, but even they can't explain why it matters to them, and you're just an outsider kind of like going, yeah, okay, guys, yeah, yeah. No, you're right. It's important. Number 74 is a good place. You're right.
So how did these seeds begin in you? You're in comedy, you're in IT, you're a writer. How did all of this begin? What was your childhood like to give you these seeds? And then even before that, when you were in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, it is a good question, right? Because the seeds are always hard to... I think we always find ourselves sort of looking at the situation we're in now and then sort of just making this convenient path to it to explain it. Whereas I think a lot of the time people, well, including myself, there's so much self-awareness I don't have, and I just like to think that I know the answers to these questions. But I mean, from what I really see it is that just like the fundamentals is that the creative things, I just loved doing them more naturally. I used to write just pointless things all the time. I'd always just have like these notebooks just full of things that I was writing about, and it would be anything. Or I wish I could still like live that life now because I don't write as much as I used to. But it was just like a way to me. It was the most natural thing in the world. I was, I used to play computer games with my brothers, and then I'd be writing things about the characters in the computer games and the things they get up to in the other parts of their life. Like real sort of simple, like innocent things that were just kind of commenting or just doing anything in the world that I was in. And, my parents could relate to it in the sense that, like, my dad worked in factory, my mum worked in payroll. It wasn't like they were from some, big kind of creative background or anything like this. They were more about, we need to, work to get money on the table to feed our children kind of mentality. So it was, yeah, if anything, I think I would probably have leaned and done more of it if it weren't for the fact that I had an upbringing where, there was much more of an emphasis on you need to get a job, which means you won't be on the streets starving and die kind of way of looking at the world. It's funny when you get a bit older and you sort of hang out with people who have come from more stable or richer backgrounds and things like that. And they have such a different way of looking at the world because they were raised more like, yeah, you can be anything. You can do this. You can do that. And for me, it's like, okay, it's good that you are enjoying some things, but you need to also get a job that will pay money. Okay. Like that is number one. The rest of it is like, we hope it goes well.
In your life, who has been somebody that you've looked up to, a role model or a hero?
I guess that's something that's changed a lot over time. But it's difficult to say a specific about who it is that I look up to, because I think for a long time that I looked up to my brother, my mother, my family, immediate family were kind of like people who meant a lot to me and could say a lot and teach me a lot about things. But over time, I guess, you kind of realize that they've got their own flaws. They've got their own things which they're doing with their lives, which may not line up with your own and may not make sense. And at this point, honestly, I think I'd say it'd have to be my wife, really. It's, above anyone else, she's the one who just has a perspective on things more sense than anything I think I can see and make sense of. And it'd be great that I have her and that she can help me with those sorts of things.
So if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
I think for me, one person who, it's a good question, and I think probably the person I would most like to is the comedy writer Chris Morris, mainly because he's not created a huge amount over the last couple of decades, but everything he creates is just to such a high standard and so well made and has his fingerprint so much over it once you recognize his writing style that it's just fascinating to know I'd love to know how seriously he takes things, what his methods are of comedy writing and things like this, because there are other people I think I would probably naturally say, oh, this person I think I'd probably have more in common with. But I think the reason why I think it would be very cool to meet him in particular is because he's like one of these reclusive characters too. And in an era where you feel like every single person worldwide is so easy to connect with, to find out things. They're doing the PR cycles of, every single thing that comes out, an Instagram account that's got like the daily up-to-date process and all of that. You end up getting drawn more to the people who just completely shut themselves off from that type of world, and you're like, what's going on? I still don't know anything about this person. So it's a natural tendency, I think.
So, all of us, and I ask a lot of musicians this, like the first concert, and it's a real motivator for them to want to actually one day get there. What was the comedian that you either saw on TV or live that really inspired you, that made you think this would be a life you would want to live?
That's very clearly Eddie Izzard for me, the British comedian Eddie Izzard. When I was like of a certain age, like mid-teenage, that's when he started to release his like best work, and some of his stand-up specials. 3 of them to this day, I can watch them and just think they're absolutely mind-blowingly good. And he created a style that was so distinct and so him, and copied by so many people as well since then, that it's just incredible to think that there's a huge difference between someone who can perform in a particular way that's really creative and really good, but someone who is almost genre defining is just a whole other level of achievement, I think. And to me, it was definitely something where like 3 of his stand-up specials, Dressed to Kill, Unrepeatable, and oh god, I can't even remember the name of the third one, but it's easy. If you know, you know. But those 3 I would just watch again and again and again, growing up on VHS, to show the kind of era. And it was just like it was just one of those things where, I think any sort of thing you expose yourself to, especially at that age, where you repeat it so much that you basically almost don't hear the words anymore. You hear like the mechanics of the sounds. And it applies, I think, to comedy and to music as well, where it's like your brain, which is still developing, it sort of starts to really sort of go like, why is that bit particularly so good? Why is that pause in that sentence particularly so good? You really just deconstruct in a way that you just wouldn't if you didn't have that annoying trait of a teenager to just want to listen to something again and again and again. But I think I watched one of them for the first time again in like over a decade, about 2 weeks ago. And it was just one of those things where I'm watching it and I'm almost saying the lines as they happen. Just from like memories I didn't even know that I had like lodged firmly in my brain.
What's been one of the best fan responses you've ever gotten from your work? A memorable response or letter or missive sent to you? I'm trying to think, because it doesn't happen every day, but when it does happen, there are quite a few that kind of catch you off guard. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had someone come up and say to me, it's kind of we were just actually talking. I'd just been teaching this guy in a stand-up comedy course. I didn't know that I'd never seen them before, and the conversation was mostly about the things we've been covering. And then arbitrarily, mid-conversation, the guy just kind of like goes, "Oh yeah, my wife thinks you're the funniest guy in the whole troupe. Thinks you're really good, really good." And it was such a weird thing to react to, because I was like, okay, I don't know who your wife is. This is the first time in this whole interaction we've had that I knew that you even knew who I was before, and I don't know what made you volunteer this particular fact at this point, but thank you. But there's just so much to unravel here. But no, I think it's actually more from the teaching that I get like that sort of feedback, and that actually is why I love teaching so much as well with like stand-up and improv, is because you really sort of connect with people, and you get people who have come up and said that like I was going through a particularly dark thing at that time, and
it's like it's something which really made a difference, and it was just exactly what I needed there and then. And and the thing is, in those situations, I know that it's not like me, because the fact is, there's so much in their mental journey that's made them get to that point to do that, to make the decision they wanted some sort of change, to learn some sort of new skill. And it's just, if anything, I just feel lucky to be the person who happened to be able to like hold their hand and, to do that thing with them.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, fans, but ultimately you live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah, that's a question which I keep asking myself and continue to ask myself always. And I also think kind of changes, because it's, as time goes on, like there's different parts of your life where different things matter more and more, less and less, and things like this. And especially since I stopped living in the country that I'm from, I kind of really became aware of friendships that were sort of, more meaningful and would still keep in touch despite the distance. And then friendships which just kind of fizzled out, and, our lives moved on in different directions and things like this. And at this stage, I guess, to me, I just feel more convinced of the things I actually enjoy than ever, and kind of want to put my time into to keep improving to find new ways to enjoy them. And so, it's like if someone were to describe me, I'd hope that they would just kind of say that he's kind of fun, and, maybe he takes things a little too seriously in terms of like, progressive values and things like that. But I guess that's what I hope. But mostly they probably just say that he just cracks jokes at everything, and seriously, he just needs to calm down a bit sometimes.
So, Stephen, if anybody wants to see a show, catch up with what you're doing with your life, where's the best place for them to go?
It's probably, for shows and things like that, I always keep the events always on Facebook. So my events under the name Stephen Morgan Hero for the username. Somehow that one wasn't taken already. And so everything that I'm involved with will be listed there. I perform regularly in Amsterdam with the group I'm with, easylaughs. So there's the easylaughs things on easylaughs.nl or the easylaughs Facebook page, Instagram, things like that. But other things that I'm doing, I would just go. It'd probably be best to give some links of things that I have, because the different things I do have different places they're happening, and otherwise we'll just get into a list of URLs, and I don't know if that makes good audio.
I get it. Yeah, I can put it in the show notes. So, Stephen,
nice.
Thank you for opening up. Thanks for taking time out. Good luck with everything. Have a great holiday season and in 2023.
You too, Joe. Thanks so much. There's been fantastic questions.
Thanks for listening and tuning in. We give you a bit of insight into the world of comedy, art, literature, business, spirituality, and music from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.